the session or if you want to review the content again. So I'm just going to kick it off. I'm Angie Spesic, the Vice President of Marketing Communications for Crohn's and Colitis Canada, and we're delighted that you could join us tonight. And I know that some of you joined also for the social media training, and we're just so appreciative of the fact that you're spending time with us to learn, but just as important, you're investing your time to help build our brand, to promote Gutsy Walk, to ensure that we have as many people engaged in this very important event. So thank you very much for your time, for your talent, for your energy. In terms of who's joining from Crohn's and Colitis Canada, we again have a few people from the marketing and communications team. We have Rosemary, who did the social media training. We have Natasha, who's the manager of marketing communications. We have Naval, part of the Gutsy Walk team, and Rebecca, part of the Gutsy Walk team. And of course, Stacy's here from the Marcom team. And what we're going to do today is really just go through media relations in terms of what's available to you and some of the steps to take in terms of getting media attention. And then when you do get that attention, what you can do and what resources you have available to you. So I'm going to turn over to Stacy to go through the material. Thank you.
So just to reiterate what Angie said, thanks so much for joining us for the media relations training. I'm sure some of this you've already been exposed to, but some of it will be new as well. So I hope you find it really valuable. So just to kind of give you an overview of what I'll be covering today. So we'll be talking about discovering opportunities, making the ask in terms of reaching out to the reporters, going over some of the tools and tips that are available to you for the Gutsy Walk media outreach. And then the media wants to know more, now what? So the next steps that you'll take part in once you've secured an opportunity. So essentially, there's a number of reasons about why media coverage is so important for Gutsy Walk. So first of all, it raises a lot of awareness about the event and then also our organization's mission as a whole, which is so important. It also generates donations that help advance research and then help us offer support programs to everyone in the community. It also drives engagement with Gutsy Walk. So it's a great way to leverage media to get participants out there, to get more volunteers, to get more donors. And then last but not least, it helps build our community. So as I'm sure you all know, this is kind of an overview of what your role will be as a media captain. So you'll work closely with your staff partner to develop a media outreach strategy to help create awareness about our organization and Gutsy Walk. So you'll work closely with them to determine what media materials you're able to help create, also to engage reporters and then local news outlets. And you'll also be helping to secure in-kind contributions of media coverage and then promotion. So as we all know, there's quite a few different types of media, and media is going on 24 hours a day. So there's constantly news stories being pitched and also news stories being put out into the world. So there is digital, there's print, there's radio, there's television, and then there's out of home. We also now live in a social media age. So as you all know, we do see a lot of news coverage coming out of there. So these are the main areas that we'll need your support with in terms of outreach. And the core activities, I'm not too sure how many of you have participated before with our media relations, but this is generally what we're looking for your support with. So we'd love to get your help with building media lists for outreach, also completing community event calendars, and then helping to pitch reporters to get those stories about Gutsy Walk. So the most important thing to start off with media relations is to build a really great media list. So essentially that involves researching your local community media outlets, whether it's newspapers or TV outlets, to start building up kind of a database of information. So you want to find out who's relevant to contact, what reporters are relevant for those outlets, and kind of build from there. And it's also so critical as well to try to leverage any relationships that you have with media outlets, whether it's yourself or maybe you have a friend or family member who might be able to reach out to a reporter on your behalf just to help us get the story out there. So the first step when you're building a media list, as I mentioned, is to do a bit of homework about what outlets actually exist. And then step 2 would be to try to find the reporter that would be best to reach out to. And we do have a number of different types of reporters. So it varies based on print and digital, and then also TV and radio. So you can see here, there's a couple of different types that are noted. So when you're doing your homework, try to keep in mind like what area that they're covering for their work. And oftentimes you'll have these listed on the pages, or you might see accompany their past stories, but it's always a good thing to take note of. So finding a reporter's contact information, sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's challenging. It often, again, requires doing quite a bit of homework. So there's a number of ways that you might find their information. So first of all, you might come across their email address if you come across one of their stories that they've recently done. You'll also find it on the Contact Us page or a similar page, and they'll typically have the title of the reporter, their email address, and then potentially a phone number. And then there are other cases where instead of having a direct contact, you might be required to fill in a form with details about the story that you're looking to pitch. But generally, if you do have any issues trying to find the reporter's information, you can always just try to contact the general outlets. And this is just an example on the side here that there are cases where a reporter might cover several areas. So for example, Angus Scott, he's a reporter with St. Catharines Standard, which is where I'm from. And you'll see there that he covers news tips, but also events. So you might come across where there is only one reporter just because news outlets are quite strapped for resources now. And so best practices for building a media list. We essentially want to try to capture as much information as possible. So to be as detailed as possible to not only help with media outreach this year, but to have a strong media list that you can refer to in previous years and let us continue building off of that. So building quite a good momentum about the different contexts that we could potentially capture coverage with. So you'll see here as an example, there's quite a few key pieces of information. Just going to add in Bill. So you'll see it has information about the actual outlet. You'll also see the social media handles. You'll see who owns that particular newspaper, if there's any similar outlets for that particular area, the circulation, who the editor is, when it was founded. So plenty of information that you can build off of when you're doing outreach and then when you're building your media list. So again, this is another example of how you might come across the same reporter who covers 2 different areas. And I guess another point to make too is if you do come across a reporter who is noted as a community events reporter, you could always try mentioning that, the particular event, to see if they'll get any coverage as well. If you had a compelling story, you could always kind of sneak that in with your ask to get coverage for the actual event, and then see if they are interested in moving further. So more tips for building a media list. So it's most important to be able to find a reporter who has either covered us in the past, whether it's Gutsy or if it's Crohn's and Colitis Canada. And then if you find a reporter who perhaps does similar events. So someone who does a lot of feel-good stories, a lot of human interest stories. So maybe there's a member of your local community who's doing really amazing work, whether it's for fundraising or another special cause. If there's local events that are being covered, if there's events being hosted by larger charities in the community, or even if you come across a reporter who covers health-related topics, those are really good individuals to watch out for while you're doing your research and then approach with a story. And then for storing lists, I've actually introduced a new tool this year that's been given to the DCs and RDs, so your staff partners. And you can work with them to kind of coordinate filling out the list. And if you have any questions, you can definitely go to your staff partner as well. So what I've done this year is I've created a template for you to use that's broken down into listing media outlets and reporters and gathering all their contact information. So our first name, last name, details about the outlet, the social media handles for the outlet, just to help out with your current and future outreach. And then I've also included an area that you can give details for community calendars. So similar to that, there'll be a link to the website if there's a particular contact that's noted for doing any submissions. And then finally, I've also put in a section where you can use it for a bit of brainstorming. So perhaps you've come across ideas that you think other health charities have done that are quite compelling. perhaps there's ideas that you've seen being done in the past, or maybe you have some ideas for this year. You can always kind of use it as a brainstorming area. So jot down any and all ideas that you have, just to help us get a couple of different stories out there. And so capturing our reporters' attention, as I mentioned, the most important part is really pitching a compelling story. So for pitching, it's simply your ask is what you're looking to have the reporter cover. It's why they should be interested in covering the story. So it's really your attempt to get them involved. So these are two examples of stories from last year that have a strong human interest factor. So I'm sure you all know Emma was our honorary chair from last year. She was featured in a story related to World IBD Day, but it was also tied into the Gutsy Walk. So they did a bit of a profile story for her and her local community, as this article is from the Welland Tribune. And then we also had another really exciting story about the two Albertans who walked across Alberta in support of Gutsy Walk. And that particular story was quite unique. It's not something that you see people doing every day. It's a unique way to approach fundraising and raising awareness. So that particular story got a lot of pickup and a lot of coverage across Alberta. So making your ask, how exactly do you reach out to a reporter to pitch your story? You can either do it by phone or by email. And when you're reaching out, you want to include a couple of key pieces of information. So you'll introduce Crohn's and Colitis Canada, so share who we are. You'll provide high-level details about what's happening on event day, the purpose of Gutsy Walk, so what are the funds supporting what amazing work our organization is doing. And then you'll also indicate how it has a really great effect on the local community. So try to build that strong connection between the event and why it should be important for coverage. And then also you'll really want to be able to clearly explain the human interest factor in terms of connecting a particular individual who's interested in sharing their story. And you'll want to be able to provide really clear details that make it easy for the reporter to understand why they should cover that story. And then finally, we do have a couple of tools available for you. And one of them is the media advisory. So for that, it essentially covers like the who, the what, where, when, and how, and the why. And it's something that reporters will typically turn to get like quick facts about the actual event. So it also hooks them in. So when you're making your ask, it's definitely important to be able to determine that you're reaching out to the right reporter based upon their events, but you want to take it one step further. So really personalize and tailor your email to the specific reporter that you're reaching out to. So indicate kind of your connection, really build a strong connection. So if you're familiar with the outlet, whether you read it, you watch it, indicate that to show that you are acquainted with the media outlet's work. If they've written about us in the past, or perhaps you've noticed that they've written similar stories, definitely indicate that to show that you are actually paying attention to their work. And then also flag how you think the story aligns with their interests based on perhaps a recent article, or maybe you've seen an article from the past year or two that seems relevant to what you're reaching out about. And you can also always use some really compelling stats. So I know we often will use how many people are affected by the disease in the community, how much maybe we raised for Gutsy Walk last year and past years, information about the diseases as well. And then you also really want to emphasize why and how the story is so important to community members. And then most important, you'll want to use like enticing language, something that's catchy, but also a bit direct when you're writing a subject line. And if you haven't heard back, don't be deterred. Oftentimes it might take a couple of tries to get in contact with a reporter just because they are so busy. They're strapped for resources. So if you don't hear back, try following up a couple of days later. You could either do it by email or phone, but keep on going. I'm sure we'll get some coverage, so don't get deterred. And for your media toolkit, we have quite a handful of tools available for you, and those will be available under the Gutsy Walk volunteer tools. We'll also make sure your DCs and RDs have access to them as well. So if you do have any questions, you can always reach out to your staff partners, and they can either forward the templates along to you or answer any of your questions. So I'll just kind of go into a brief overview about what the toolkit entails. So we have a couple of different key message documents that we'll share. one being about the Gutsy Walk, another being about the organization, and then also about the diseases. And these are essentially for you to refer to if you're crafting a media pitch, or if you're preparing for an interview, or if you're preparing someone else to take part in an interview. So it just gives an idea about what kind of information might be helpful to share, or what kind of information you might be asked about. Next, we have the media pitch template. And this is something that you can use as a really rough guideline, because you will have to tailor your reach, or your pitch, I should say, to the reporter based on the story that you're looking to share. So this will just give you a general idea about some of the key pieces of information that you should include, but definitely tailor it to the reporter that you're pitching and then the actual story that you're pitching. And then we also have the media advisory template, which I just previously mentioned, that covers the who, what, where, when, why. And then we have a community calendar template as well. So you can refer to this when you're reaching out to your local news outlets to add details about the event to their community calendars. So again, as I just mentioned, the media advisory covers the what, why, when, where, who, and then a highlight. So perhaps you have somebody who's interested in giving an interview, you can always reiterate it in this document as well. So essentially just gives the reporter key details about the event. So now that you've got some interest from the media, there's a couple of next steps. So you'll want to reach out to your staff partner and inform them about the opportunity, and also just flag the media opportunities with media@crohnsandcolitis.ca. So that's to let the Marcom team know what kind of exciting news is taking place, what kind of exciting stories are underway. And you can also always turn to us and your staff partner if you need support with media training for high profile opportunities. And then also the toolkit is also available to you as well. And then finally, you'll want to share any coverage that you have across your social media accounts. So you'll want to work closely with the social media lead for your local Gutsy Walk, and then also your staff partners to distribute the news across either your Gutsy Walk social media accounts, or if there's chapter accounts as well. So tips for the interview. I know sometimes people have questions about, well, what do I wear for an interview? What kind of questions might they ask? And so we just wanted to give a couple of tips here. So you can definitely wear your Gutsy Walk t-shirt if you do have one on hand. We would recommend avoid wearing solid red, white, green, black, or heavily patterned tops, just because they might not necessarily appear as well on camera, or they might come across as a bit distracting. And you'll want to take your time to review the talking points in advance, and definitely reiterate that to any individual who you're helping to coordinate the interview with. We want to make sure people feel as comfortable as possible to let their true self shine through. If your interview is for television or in person, sorry, you can definitely either do an in-person interview, or you could do a virtual interview. Obviously, it's up to the comfort and the discretion of the individual who's participating in the interview. And when you are talking to a reporter, whether it's by Zoom or if it is in person, it's always important to look directly at the individual. And we always just encourage you to smile, breathe. Remember, it's a great opportunity. It's really fun to help create awareness about the event. So share your enthusiasm as much as possible about Gutsy Walk. So what topics might they ask about? So there's typically general topics that might be covered. So what's the purpose of Gutsy Walk? Where do the proceeds go? What's your connection to the event? How can someone get involved with Gutsy Walk? What are the diseases? Like, how do the diseases work? How many people are affected by these diseases? And you can always turn to your key messages for support. And then the press release, that is an essential tool that we use in communications and public relations to draw the attention of reporters. So it helps generate stories and publicity. And the power of the press releases really comes into play after the actual event. So we will be distributing a press release on the national newswire within the week following. And essentially, it also kind of covers the most important points about the event. So what was it, who was there, when, where, and why? And the total amount that's raised typically includes a quote from the CEO, and then also emphasizes where the funds raised are going towards. So in our case, research and patient programs. So community event calendars are another easy and great way to raise awareness about Gutsy Walk. And you'll find these community calendars across a number of outlets. So it could be radio, or it could be TV, or it could be newspapers as well. And there's two different options for completing and entering a community event listing. So one might be to complete an online form, and you'll run into a handful of options for submitting the information. So in one circumstance, you might just be able to insert the information that's general to the event. So it won't have any requirements for submission. Another scenario that you might come across is you can include details about the event, but you might be required to complete one line about the actual address. And if that circumstance you come across, you can just include either virtual event, or you can list the address for Crohn's and Colitis Canada's national office. And then finally, the third option you might come across is some outlets require you to complete all areas of the address, and they make it mandatory. So if you come across that circumstance, you can definitely just use the address for a national office. And then what I had previously said is that sometimes you will come across reporters who will create the community event listing for their newspaper or for their radio station. So you would be emailing the details to those individuals, and we do have a template available for that. So this is an example of community event calendar listing. So you'll see here it's a circumstance where you have to contact the community events reporter. And then you just see an example of how it might be included on the website. So in this case, it's things to do in South Halton, August 21st to 23rd. And then here's another example of a community event calendar listing. It's not necessarily a traditional media outlet. So it's not like an online news, say for the St. Catharines Standard or the Burlington Post. It's more of an online blog lifestyle website. So you'll be able to reach out to these different types of resources as well. And you'll also come across some news stations like Global BC or other global outlets will give you the option to insert details about an event, and you can do that there too. And if you do come across circumstances where they ask for an image, you can just reach out to your staff partner and they'll be able to create one for you. And since we are living in a digital age, there's a couple of innovative ways that you can share events in your community. So one of them is Meet Up, and for there it's designed to like meet up with different groups, share event details, and you can definitely use this as a resource. So always add in the Gutsy Walk event for your local community. And similar to last year's, we will be producing a PSA. And so the radio PSA will be available in April, and you'll be able to find it on our website underneath Gutsy Walk volunteer tools, and your staff partner will also have access to it as well. Typically, we have a 10-second ad and then a 30-second ad in English and French. And we do have a handful of other promotional assets available, and these would be for any in-kind media sponsorship that you acquire. So we have these images for print ads, and then we also have digital ad assets. So we will have all of these media toolkit materials available to you on our website, as well as a copy of the presentation, both recorded and a PowerPoint deck. So I just want to close off by saying thank you so much for helping us garner some media coverage. We really appreciate all of your work. We couldn't raise awareness about the event and make it such a great success without all of your support. So on behalf of everyone on the Marcom team, thank you. And that's the end of the presentation. If you do have any questions, you can always reach out to your staff partner or media@crohnsandcolitis.ca. And then I'll just open it up in case anybody has questions about the material that I just covered.
There was a question from Debbie whether this template will be available to us after the webinar. But I think, Stacey, you answered that because all of the tools will be available on the volunteer section of the website. And as well, Kelly typically sends the presentation out after the webinar to you.
I don't see too many other questions. Okay, Well, great. So I guess we'll just close off the presentation there. But if you do have any questions, definitely reach out to your staff partner or us at media@crohnsindancolitis.ca, and then we're happy to help.
Thanks,
Okay.
everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This was the better of the three presentations because I guess I'm the old school guy, and everything you said in here made a lot of sense. And I actually have to approach a few people, and these are very, very good tips to use.
Oh,
So I'll
fantastic.
be able to work on this. Just don't ask me to do Instagram or
Oh.
what all those other things are called. So
Yeah,
this
That's wonderful,
this was a
Bill.
good presentation. So thank you very much.
What are you in Mississauga?
Yes, I work for Crystal Kopek. She's
Oh,
our
okay.
president.
Awesome. Crystal's there. So you're both in Mississauga. So is it still the Mississauga News there? The paper?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I used to live in Mississauga like 30 years ago. So I guess the paper is still around.
It's still
some
around.
neighborhoods.
It's not being delivered as openly as it was before COVID, but there are areas of the city that are still getting it delivered, and that's one of the areas I'm responsible to look for too. That one and global news. So I have some very good
good.
friends that work in both of those areas, and
Mhm.
these things. I mean, they make common sense. This is common sense stuff.
Yeah, it's relationships, right? It's knocking on doors, and it's a bit of having some stories in your side pocket, whether or not it's a local honorary chair or someone really special in your community in terms of willing to like share their story. And because all the papers are looking for human interest content. And I know I live in Oakville, and the Oakville Beaver, as it's referred to, is pretty slim. Like they don't have a lot of stories these days, and so I'm sure they're looking for some good content.
I have one more question.
Sure.
Debbie Davis. I knew somebody named Debbie Davis a long time ago who was with the Mississauga Crohn's and Colitis chapter. Would that by any chance be you?
Nope, it would not. I'm in Regina, Saskatchewan.
Okay, that's all. I just wanted to ask. Very much. I was looking up quickly. I saw your picture wasn't there, so no, you are not our Debbie Davis. So
That's right.
Nice to see you, Debbie. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah,
And
no problem.
What's the paper in Saskatchewan? The little local paper. Every city has one.
We have the Leader Post. That's our main.
Leader.
Yeah, but I don't know what probably other little small ones around, like at coffee shops and things like that. So I feel like I've got a lot of work to do. I had actually said to Carolyn in Saskatchewan, my director, I said, isn't there a template out there where somebody's already created all the different contact places? Because when I said, sure, I'll take on marketing, I thought that was already created because I work full. I'm already on 5 different committees, and so there's a lot of off-hour things I'm already involved in. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so. But once we have this template all done, it'll be easier for future years.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Like keeping it on hand for next year, because I'm sure somebody went through those steps last year. Mm-hmm. And to, have that as like with Carolyn, she has it, and, and she can take it and kind of, you can update it, because granted, people change, but the papers are probably all the same. The links might be the same. And that's one of the tools Stacy has, is like a way of like recording it. So if it hasn't been done this year, it will be recorded. So hopefully it will help in the future, but it's a great point.
Excellent. Well, thank you. I do agree with Bill that there's a lot of really good real world stuff applicable for what will inspire us to go and build those relationships and do our ask and get some information.
Great. Well, thank you for all your help.
Yeah, I may start out by talking about hockey or talking about golf, but that's just a lead into the conversation. And then once we get into that, I assume we'll get the charts from the webinar.
Oh, yes,
Yeah, so
absolutely.
once
You'll
we
get
do
all the
that, then we
content.
can start to develop our plan from that based
Mhm.
on who we're talking to and what media they have. So it'll be fun. This is something I like to do, so it'll be enjoyable. I'm glad Crystal gave me these two things to do, so I hope I
Yeah,
don't
well,
disappoint her.
please share your successes. We'd love to hear your tips once you go through the process.
Yes, so I'll make sure Cindy is fully aware of what we're doing.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. From
Thank
me,
you. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
bye now.
Bye.
Bye.